Hello and welcome to Biz1st Review 360, where we bring you a roundup of this week's top stories that impacts the economy. My name is Charlene Benedict. First, let's start off with a look at your top stories. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce gathered together top economists to analyze what 2017 holds for Sri Lanka and its implications for business. Let's now take a look at this story. A top economist says Sri Lanka may see extended periods of low growth and low inflation due to lack of broad-based economic reforms.
We may have an extended period of low growth in a low inflationary environment. And this is accentuated because of the lack of broad-based structural reforms. When you look at the program that we have with the IMF, it is essentially a stabilization program. It is looking at fiscal targets on inflationary targets to rebalance the macroeconomic stability, the instability that we saw last year. It is not a stabilization and adjustment program. Adjustment program suggests that there are conditions attached to lending related to structural reforms, whether it's state enterprises or reforms related to labor market conditions, etc. But the current program is essentially a stabilization program. So when you look at the overall medium-term macro framework, it is very clear that growth is expected to remain stagnant at about 5% during that adjustment period between 2016 and 2020. And that comes about as a result of the kind of revenue-based fiscal adjustment that we are having.
The Corruption Perception Index 2016 has spelled bad luck for Sri Lanka, with the country slipping 12 points to be ranked 95th among 177 countries. Now, how will this impact the investments that are drawn in towards Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka was ranked at 95 out of 176 countries with a poor score of 36 when compared to 2015, when the country was ranked at 83 amongst 168 countries. The report released by Transparency International, the global movement against corruption, ranks countries according to the perceived level of public sector corruption.
When we look at the data, it's a little concerning because actually what it illustrates is that our perception of public sector corruption has really not changed much at all over the last few years. It has actually stayed the same, and this is despite changes in government. So the Corruption Perception Index is based on the input of academics, of country analysts, of business people, and when we understand all of this, we start seeing that the perceptions of corruption really are fundamentally unchanged.
India has scored highest in the South Asian region with a score of 40 and ranked 79th overall.
Many argue that it is too early to predict the impact of US President Donald Trump's foreign policy on South Asia. Now, at an event organized at the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Athul Keshap elaborated on certain aspects that could improve bilateral ties between the two countries.
During his inaugural address, President Trump captured the concerns of millions of Americans about key issues that affect our daily lives. As the nation's chief executive, he also highlighted the importance of taking prompt action to address these concerns so that America's traditionally strong presence on the global stage can be preserved and reinforced. As the record of the past few decades has shown, a strong America is an essential component to global peace, stability, and prosperity, and an important pillar of democratic values and government for people all around the world. The administration of President Donald J. Trump has just begun. Over the days to come, pending Senate confirmation, his cabinet appointees and their deputies and aides will lend their energy and leadership to achieving the President's agenda both at home and overseas. As the policies of the new administration progress, These senior officials will add their influence and their inflection to America's engagement with countries around the world. As we go forward, the United States will continue to support Sri Lanka because your progress on reconciliation, democracy, and social and economic development are of regional and global consequence. Sri Lanka's success helps contribute to the peace and stability of the broader Indian Ocean region, and the strength and resilience of its democracy can serve as an inspiration to many countries that have suffered from strife and repression. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, continuity has been a hallmark of American foreign policy for decades. And moving forward, we will continue to work with partners around the world on areas of mutual interest. In this region, we share a clear interest with Sri Lanka in securing sea lanes that are vital to the maritime commerce in goods and energy that fuels growth and boosts prosperity across the entire Indo-Pacific region. We also appreciate President Sirisena's leadership in pledging Sri Lankan support to the UN's global peacekeeping efforts, marking your country's contribution to global peace and security.
And now we move on to a look at trending today.
The three-day festival will offer Sri Lankans an opportunity to experience Japanese song and dance, cinema, food, entertainment and art. The Japan-Sri Lanka Expo 2017 will also have a special zone comprising of Japanese products and business establishments. Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Kenichi Suganuma, said the festival aims to showcase Japanese culture, provide opportunities for small and medium enterprises, and revitalize Japan-Sri Lanka relations.
Japan and Sri Lanka has always been good, friendly nations. And now we are trying to revitalize the relation between Japan and Sri Lanka in many areas. And this Japan Expo premiere comes at this very timely moment. It is an exhibition about various aspects of Japan, a comprehensive exposition about Japan. And as you will hear, there will be movies by Japan and the sumo performance, dances, chado, flower arrangement. So many aspects of Japan will be exhibited. And you will see also some of the Japanese business coming, and also you will be introduced to the way of life in Japan, and you will be able also to enjoy Japanese food.
Organizers of the event said action-packed entertainment including Japanese taiko and dance, live Zomo performances, kimono fashion shows and popular Japanese movies such as Oshin, Seven Samurai and Samurai Hustle are lined up for visitors. Ayako Kobayashi, the actress who played Oshin, a household name in Sri Lanka, is expected to grace the opening ceremony as a special guest on the 3rd of February. The exhibition is being jointly organized by the Japanese Embassy in Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan Embassy in Japan.
Coming up after the break, a chat with a top academic from the University of Management and Science of Malaysia on how to make students active contributors to a country's economy. Welcome back. You are with Biz1st Review 360. Now, Newsfirst journalist Nadim Majid caught up with Professor Shukri Abyajid on the role Asian universities are playing in the 21st century.
The 21st century, Asia's century it's being called in terms of global economics. Asia, specifically Southeast and South Asia and the Far East as well, have become the engine of global economic growth. What is the role that Asian education institutions now play in this century, taking Asia forward? I'm in conversation today with Professor Shukri, the president and founder of MSU, the Management and Science University in Malaysia. Professor Shukri, thank you very much for speaking to Biz1st Review 360. Let me start by asking you, very generally, what is the role of the Asian education, of the Asian university in this 21st century?
Thank you for inviting me. I think one of the important things as a university is to look into to make sure that we can be part and parcel of the development of a country, of a nation. I'm a strong believer that education is always the best mobility factors. And I think in this context, probably university can be a best institution that can transform the country, transform the nation by looking into the future of preparing our students to be a well-rounded graduate and be prepared for 21st century learning. And at the same manner also be a hub for the growth.
This is a term that is thrown around quite frequently, 21st century learning. What is 21st century learning? How is it different from the past? What is the focus of education today, especially in terms of the sciences?
I think when we talk about 21st century learning, it's always about being connected, be part of the technology. And I think with that component, you need a new set of skills. It's not good to be sound, good academically, but you must also be able to be collaborative. You must be able to have good communication skill. You must be able to be creative. And you must be able to have critical thinking, because this is the component of connectivity of 21st century learning, and this is very important.
Professor Shukri, when we're talking about education, there's a complaint that is made frequently now, is that when you're talking about education, there is less of a focus today in the present on the quality of education. There are less people talking about the quality of education, as they say. Do you think that this is true? Do you think that there's less of a focus on the quality of education today? And how is MSU different?
I think from our perspective, university must always focus on quality, because that is the basic pillars of any institution. Those who do not focus on quality, they will not get to be successful, and they cannot produce the right graduates. And I think this is a very important element for MSU, Management Science University. We always focus on quality. We always benchmarking ourselves with international players. We work with many partners university all over the world. We have the global mobility program. We make ourselves as the best university in terms of preparing the student for well-rounded graduate, for employability and for entrepreneurship, because that is we have the economy.
Another thing when you're talking about the quality of education is, of course, you come to the sphere of research and development. We've seen how in the West, in the rise of the West, we saw the integral role that higher education institutions doing research and development played in driving innovation and creativity forward. Even now in Asia, many Asian companies, many Asian enterprises are doing their research and development overseas.
Yes.
So when you're talking about private industry driving the growth of education in Asia, do you think that Asian higher education institutions, Asian universities, are geared to do the kind of R&D that the private sector demands?
Yes, I think this is something that we need to be done in the university. When we talk about the industry, it's always about partnership. And I keep saying that in order to be successful in the future, we must make sure that the public and private partnership must be there. And at the same manner, we must bring the industry into the campus in the manner that our curriculum, the way we deliver, must be industry embedded. The industry embedded curriculum will mesh because they can spur the research, applied research with the industry. I think with that component, the three-angle collaboration between industry, university and the public, that will make the society move forward.
Professor Shukri, can I ask you, we've seen recently, especially in the United States, with the confirmation of the new education secretary, there's a lot of debate about for-profit colleges.
Yes.
And and the motivations, whether it's education-driven or whether it is solely profit-driven. Do you think that even in Asia, that the legislators need to start rethinking how they regulate higher education?
Yes, I think, as I said earlier, it's very much about partnership of public and private. It's not public or private. I think with that partnership, we can make the country grow. And this is something that we in Asia have to fully develop and fully embrace. We must make sure that the partnership of industry and public, private and public, moving, and at the same manner will get benefits for the student. I think I must say also, the most important thing we must focus is about the output. If we have installed the right benchmarking, right quality process, and the right output of graduate, no matter whether it's public or private, we are contributing for the nation building.
Professor Shukri, I have just one final question for you before we wrap up, because we're a little short on time as well. When you're talking about the growth of MSU, we've seen MSU has gotten a presence already in Sri Lanka. And MSU is not alone. We're seeing more and more Asian universities looking at Sri Lanka as a viable option. Why is this? Why the focus on it?
I think one of the things in MSU, we are a global university. And I've been here for the last 12 to 15 years. I have seen Sri Lanka in the past, and I can also foresee the Sri Lanka in the future. One of the strong assets that you have here as a country is the human capital. So I think this is the reason why we, management science university, be here setting up our learning center, because we would like to contribute and to develop, to nurture in our small way to the development of human capital here, because I believe Sri Lanka can be education hub in the future. You have all the infrastructures coming up and also the asset that you have, the human capital. The only thing that you need a good, well-rounded policies.
Professor Shukri, thank you very much for speaking to Biz1st Review 360. It's been an enlightening conversation.
Thank you
very much.
And now we move on to a look at other business developments overseas.
Keeping true to his election campaign pledge, US President Donald Trump signed the executive order to end American involvement in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a pact designed to create a single big market such as the European Union. The TPP is made up of 12 countries that border the Pacific Ocean, representing roughly 40% of the world's economic output. Trump, who aims to bring back manufacturing back to the United States, prefers one-to-one trade deals rather than multinational agreements. His policies on the trade reflects a feeling that international trade deals have hurt the US job market.
So the Trans-Pacific Partnership has from the beginning been one of the most controversial trade agreements in the world. There has been a lot of criticism against it, saying that it gives undue advantage to large multinational companies. There were lots of protests against Trans-Pacific Partnership world over. At the same time, it was uncertain throughout whether the United States is politically ready to sign an agreement of this nature. This agreement has been more important politically to strengthen US ties with the Asian economies, especially to counterbalance China. So it will be more a political fallout than economic fallout.
In the aftermath of the TPP setback, Newsfirst spoke to economists to find out the impact of US President Donald Trump's foreign policy decisions on the Sri Lankan exports to the United States.
This Trump presidency, if there is one thing predictable, that is unpredictability. So it is very difficult to, because Donald Trump just took over, to me, it will be a test of how much the US systems and institutions can control or can have some checks and balances on the behavior of an individual. So it's very difficult to say what Trump presidency will be like, and other than to say it will be one of the most interesting presidencies ever. But for Sri Lanka, we are only exporting apparel to the United States. I do not see that being significantly affected because of Trump presidency.
On the other side of this short break, thoughts on climate change, opportunities and challenges for Sri Lanka. Welcome back. You're with Biz1st Review 360. Now on our segment, Speak Your Mind, Nobel Prize winner Professor Robert Watson shares his views on climate change.
absolutely no doubt that human activities are changing the Earth's climate. There's no doubt that most of the impacts are harmful, especially in developing countries and especially for poor people. We absolutely need all countries of the world to transition to a low-carbon economy using already cost-effective low-carbon technologies. All countries of the world recently signed pledges in Paris to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases with a goal to meet a 2-degree target, an aspirational goal to 1.5, but I have to be said, the pledges are totally and utterly inadequate. In 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio, we said we need to stop human-induced climate change. Since then, a significant increase in the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide. Why? Our emissions from the use of fossil fuel, coal, gas and oil, continually going up. Last year or so it seems to be flattening, but as you can see, a very, very significant increase in our emissions relative to 1990. We've almost doubled them, and in 1990 we recognised climate change was a serious issue. In the last decade, 91% of our carbon dioxide has come from burning fossil fuels, but 9% has come from deforestation. About 44% of the gas stays in the atmosphere, and that's why we're getting human-induced climate change. 31% does go back into forested systems. 26% goes into the ocean. That sounds good, that it's not staying in the atmosphere, but it's leading to ocean acidification, which has a real major problem on coral reef systems, shellfish and fisheries. I currently chair something called the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem. We're a scientific organisation. We don't make policy. We evaluate what do we know and what we don't know, and we suggest what does the science say about the loss of biodiversity? What are the options to conserve and to protect biodiversity? Sri Lanka is a member, but it never shows up. It hasn't been to one single meeting, even though the signing agreement. I would hope that Sri Lanka could really be an active participant. And as I've said, forests and other natural ecosystems play a key role in mitigating climate change. Okay, so the question is, we've already observed a 1-degree warming globally. The land areas have warmed more than the oceans, and the high latitudes have warmed more than the equatorial region. This simply shows you what if we can stay on a low emission scenario. The top is temperature and the bottom is precipitation. If we can go to low emissions, we have some hope of staying within a 2 to 3 degree world. But if we're on a high emissions pathway, which is where we are today, we're going to see changes of 5 or more degrees Celsius, and the land areas much warmer than the oceans, and the high latitudes much warmer. Precipitation, we'll see more precipitation at high latitudes and in the tropics, and much drier conditions in the subtropics. The perverse issue is the dry areas get drier and the wet areas get wetter. But all areas will have more floods and more droughts. So we're seeing a very, very serious situation. Predictable. One of the biggest challenges, I believe, for Sri Lanka and for many other countries in the world is how do you manage your water resources? How do you manage the agriculture when the rainfall is unpredictable? Will the monsoon come earlier? Will it come later? Will it be stronger? Will it be weaker? We don't know all of these answers. So the challenge for Sri Lanka is how do you have a resilient water infrastructure when it's hard to predict exactly what will happen in the future? Sea level rise, as I've always said, will clearly affect coastal infrastructure. It will also affect, obviously, your coral systems. Clearly more floods, but also more droughts as you're currently seeing. So what are the main effects on climate change? I've really said it. Higher temperatures, more variable precipitation, more floods, more droughts, adversely affecting our ability to manage water and agriculture, especially in areas with deforestation, increased soil erosion, siltation of your reservoirs, more landslides. coastal infrastructure clearly threatened, but also saltwater intrusion into the water system, affecting water quality and affecting agriculture. Also, the warmer temperatures really bad and changes in precipitation on both coastal ecosystems and on terrestrial ecosystems. A major threat to biodiversity. Sri Lanka has one of the most outstanding natural resources in biodiversity in the world. Many unique endemic species, many of them threatened by human-induced climate change. It threatens poverty alleviation. Poor people are more vulnerable to climate change than rich people. It will threaten agricultural productivity. Therefore, it threatens food security and our ability to fight hunger. It will affect healthy lives. More dengue, more malaria, more cholera, heat stress mortality. It will absolutely affect our ability, as I've already said, to manage our water and affect sanitation. Infrastructure will clearly be threatened by climate change. There will be more and more inequality between countries. Poor countries will suffer far more than rich countries, and there'll be inequality within the countries, with poor people suffering more than rich people. Cities with heat stress mortality, major issue, and as I've already said, our oceans and our terrestrial biosphere clearly will be threatened. And the last one is, when you get resources that are threatened, it can actually lead to a less inclusive society and potentially threaten peace.
And that's all the business stories we've got for you tonight. You can look us up on Facebook by typing in Biz1st Review 360. Thanks for watching. Good night.